online communicators in the Denver, Colorado area. As many of you know, we are celebrating our 100th year of Toastmasters. When I joined Toastmasters, we were celebrating the 59th anniversary. It gives you an idea how long I've been around. But today we're going to talk about evaluations. Now, I want you to know that your club is already doing very good evaluations. And what I want to do today, how many of you get nervous when you give evaluations? Yeah, because I'll tell you, it's the hardest thing we do. What I want to do today is give you a framework for giving evaluations. But I want to emphasize that this is a method of evaluation. It's not the method. You're going to come into your own style as you do more evaluations. But this at least will give you a framework. As Zara mentioned, my four P's of evaluation. We're only going to cover two today, just for time purposes. I think the next time, probably in January, we'll do the other two. But today, the first two are really more like guidelines for evaluations. Then when we do the last two P's, these are more practical and an application of talk about. And also during that second meeting, Barack's going to give a very short speech. And then we're going to talk about some of the principles and how they apply to Barack's speech. So that's the plan. So for today, as I told you, evaluations are the hardest thing that we do in Toastmasters, but they're also the most valuable. Think about it. You're getting up there and giving your subjective analysis of someone's speech. You're putting yourself out there. And that can be a little bit scary. When I teach evaluations, I take a rather different approach. And I've opened this seminar before by saying this. I don't want you to be a good Toastmaster evaluator. Sounds a little strange. Everything we do in Toastmasters, we're learning to actually apply in the real world. So I want you to be a good real world evaluator. Now, of course, I want you to give good evaluations in your club, but I want you to be able to take this and use it as something you can apply in the real world. And think about evaluation skills that you use every day. Your boss may ask you for feedback, or an employee may ask you for feedback on something. You may be in a meeting, a team meeting, your department meeting, and you may be asked for feedback there, or even just one-on-one. Now, are any of you members of other volunteer organizations? I'm betting that you have to give feedback in those on a regular basis. So as I said, we're gonna get to four P's eventually. We're just gonna do two today. But just, first a few things. First, what are we evaluating when we evaluate someone's speech? Any thoughts? You can unmute yourselves. No, okay.
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, the question is, what are we evaluating when we do an evaluation?
We are evaluating the speech and not
Right.
the person. And sometimes if we want to go to a very, very high level, we can say that we have everything about the speech, but we never we should judge the person, like if you don't like the person, it's not related with the speech.
Thank you. That is exactly what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Not evaluating the person. And interestingly enough, we're really not evaluating their content either, because you may not agree with the content. They may be talking about something controversial that you don't agree with. We're not evaluating that. We're evaluating how they presented it. So an evaluation then is, one thing I want to emphasize is, an evaluation is not a summary of the speech. Evaluation is an analytical exercise. You are providing analysis. It is, most importantly, it's an exercise in listening. We talk about Toastmasters being a communication and leadership organization. Sometimes I think we should add another L and say listening. When we're evaluating someone, we're looking for various elements. We're looking for things like eye contact and gestures, voice, pace, pauses. We're looking at language. Was it colorful? Was it inappropriate anywhere, perhaps? Also looking at logic. Did the speech have a logical flow to it? And did they meet the purpose of the assignment? So let's start. We're going to talk about the 4 Ps, but again, we're only going to do 2. We talked about those, but my first is preparation. A lot of work needs to go in beforehand, really, for an evaluation. And it starts, with your vice president of education, the Toastmaster, the general evaluator, and the speaker. First, I want the club, you need to do this, and that is you want to line up the skill levels of evaluators with the speakers. You don't want a brand new member of your club evaluating a level 5 speech. That's intimidating. And it really starts then with the speaker reaching out to the evaluator. What are the goals? Is there anything special the speaker would like the evaluator to look for? And evaluator, ideally, you're reading the assignment ahead of time. And when you walk into the meeting, or in this case, our virtual meeting, this is not the first time you're seeing what's going on. And also, evaluator, think about, and we mentioned this today, they mentioned that I have evaluated this person before. So that's another thing to take into consideration there. So it doesn't take a lot of effort, and a little bit of preparation will pay off greatly in the end. Okay, so are we good on preparation? Any other questions there, or things that you've done on a preparation level?
Jim, this is Burak. I would like to add one point. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, in addition to matching the speaker's experience to speeches, one of the things I would like to emphasize is the evaluating an icebreaker. In my mind, it's a great idea to actually give an experienced speaker the role of evaluating an icebreaker, because icebreaker naturally it requires a lot of improvement. But what is important is the feedback. Did we really get an understanding of the person speaker's background a little bit? And it needs to have a more encouraging tones than pointing out how to improve the speech.
Okay, I think that's a great point. If we can line up that way, because an icebreaker can make or break people sometimes. And just another note on evaluating an icebreaker, and this really advice goes out to the grammarian and the ah counter. We never hammer an icebreaker in terms of ums and ahs and grammar. That can come in later speeches, but that first speech out of the gate, I encourage my club not even to report on an icebreaker's grammarian, counter type things. Just something to keep in mind. Okay, so that's our first P, which is preparation. Okay, our second P is principles. And again, these are some guidelines in terms of how you want to conduct yourself when you're giving an evaluation. Okay, and just a reminder, we're not evaluating the person, not content. We're focusing on presentation. And just remember, evaluations are subjective. And I want to give you an example of this. Years back, I was trying to help a club here in the Metro Division in the Denver area get restarted. And a young lady had been selected to do the evaluation, and she was scared. But she got up there and said one of the most important things, and that was the two words, I felt, which again is the subjective nature of an evaluation. So there are three key principles that I want you to keep in mind when you're doing evaluation. Principle number one, you must be kind. I want you to think back to the quote we had to start the meeting from Alexander the Great. And in essence, it was comparing obtaining something by force versus, in essence, trying to get consent. You're going to do a lot better giving people feedback that's kind. And I want to give you an example of this. A club I belonged to years back, the speaker was giving his first advanced speech. The evaluator got up there and said, "This was not an advanced speech. You met none of the objectives. I have no idea what you were doing. You need to go back to the drawing board and do this all over." Gentleman's name was Sam. Now, how many meetings do you think Sam came back to after that? None.
No.
Sam never showed up again. And it was terrible because Sam was also an English as a second language speaker, and he was moving his way through the program quite nicely, never came back. So be kind. I don't care if this person is given the worst speech in the world. You can find something kind to say. Okay, principle number two, feedback has to be specific. You can't just give kind of a fuzzy thing that says, "Oh yeah, I didn't like this," or you can't say your logic was a little fuzzy or anything like that. What is it about it that made it fuzzy? How did it not resonate with you? Why? Be specific about it. Or it could be something to say, you lost me when you did this. So you have to be specific in your criticism. Okay. And principle number three is the big one. And this sounds a little strange, but feedback must also be directional. I call it directional in nature. And this is what I mean by that. Years back in my Columbine Communicators Club, we had a gentleman who joined, and Todd was very energetic. He would race back and across the front of the room, and people told him, "Todd, you're racing back in front of the room." But that didn't tell him anything. What they needed to tell him was, "Todd, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to walk to one side of the room, make eye contact with a few people as you're giving your speech, and then slowly work your way back to the middle. Same thing, make some eye contact. And three, then go to the other side of the room if you feel the need." So it was directional. So until someone actually told him that, Todd did not understand really what people were getting at with saying, "Oh, you're just pacing too much." So the criticism was, "You're pacing too much." Now the directional is, what are you going to do about it? So again, back to the thing, if you didn't like the logic in their speech, what I want you to do is say, perhaps if you said it like this instead, here's an idea. So I want you to be specific about it, and then I want you to tell them how to fix what it is that you're commenting on. So the good news is Todd was actually the person who helped me come up with these three principles initially when I talked to him about it. So just a quick reminder here, practice what I'm going to do next time. You must be kind, be specific, and be directional in nature of your feedback. Okay, so those are the first two P's. I don't think I'm going to speak at your next meeting, but perhaps in January, we're getting into practice and presentation, and we're actually going to apply some of these things. Barack has volunteered to give a short speech that we'll use as kind of a test speech. And then afterwards, we'll actually talk about applying some of those principles that we learned today. So if there are any questions, I'm going to stop sharing. If there are any questions, we can take those now. If not, I will return control of the meeting to our Toastmaster, Zara.
Jim, Jim, I have a question. Instead of making a statement, I would like to ask a question to our members, participants of tonight's meeting. Who would like to take this question? So my question is why it is important to be kind when giving feedback. Why it is important to be kind.
Well, I think that it is important to be kind, not only in Toastmasters, but also in the world. Because imagine you are having a very hard time, and then Toastmaster is your hobby, and then you have a worse time, and you are paying for your hobby. So it's a valuable hobby. And I think that the fact that you make your mindset and behave daily to be kind in everything you do, not only to become a better person, to become a better evaluation. And I can tell you, sometimes some words, they can hurt someone forever. I just still remember what people told me my first time when I was in Toastmasters. And the first time is when everybody remember everything. So I think that kind is a must.
Excellent answer, Maura. Thank you for volunteering very quickly. And I would like to add one more perspective here. From a neuroscience perspective, it was found out that about 15, 20 years ago, the feedback that's given to a person in a negative perspective has four times more emotional impact in the brain. A positive feedback would be one time. That's why I want to give a kind feedback and we want to give the opportunity. Otherwise, the brain of the speaker is going to be filled with negativity and pain and many other things. I don't want to go through a list.
Can I just add also something here? By just referring to the quote of the day by Hassan, he said, whatever position you gain by sword cannot be sure or lasting, but the love you gained by kindness and moderation is certain and durable. I think this also plays into what we're talking about here, that if you are sincere and kind to someone when you're criticizing them, that leaves a really lasting impression. That when you're being harsh on them, they can be more defensive and they listen to that on the short term, and after some time it doesn't stick. So that's just my take.
I think you're getting the message on the being kind. And it's like I said, that woman hammered Sam on that evaluation, and he never came back to Toastmasters.
May I add something? And I have a question. So actually, I remember the very first time I was evaluated for my icebreaker. I was in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and they have a good, I don't know whether it happened every Toastmaster clubs or not, but no matter what, everybody stand up and clap hand for the very first speech of that person to be encouraged. And I got the feeling, and that motivates me to move on and encourage me. Although I might not be that much good in my speech for the first time, but that helps me to finish 4 levels within 4 months, or by going here and there and being too motivated and encouraged. Yeah. I mean, before the half of the term, I finished 4 levels of my first pathway. Right. And I have a question for you, Jim.
Yes.
Actually, whether we are speaker or let's say evaluator, no matter, in another club, we never see the evaluator or the speaker. And when we are asking, okay, give me the number of evaluator or may I have the number of a speaker, they said no. So the point that you raised for preparation, stay in dilemma, there is no connection. Just see them here.
Right.
We are not aware of what I want to say, what evaluator
Right.
wants to convey. So I think it is just 3 minutes of speech and that's all. I mean, evaluation, that's all. What do you
Right.
think?
Yeah, this is where your vice president of education comes in and also your Toastmaster. Because ideally, you're lining up your evaluators and your Toastmasters ahead of time. Now, I'm the vice president of education in my club. And when the next meeting is coming up, I look at that. Again, I try to match levels a little bit, and I'll send those assignments out and I'll say, hey, reach out to people. And speakers, send your evaluator your speech content from Pathways so that they can, ideally, it's like I said, I want people to see that before they go into the meeting. And now, one thing, as I understand, you're not on Free Toast Host, which is a wonderful vehicle for doing this kind of thing because the speakers are listed on the agenda, but also listed there is what exercise they're doing from Pathways, and it'll have the evaluation form there. And as an evaluator, I can go into Free Toast Host and download that and have an idea what that speaker is going to do. Now, I know you guys don't use that. The good news is my club is going to do a little seminar on using Free Toast Host. Now, unfortunately, we meet at a time that does just not work for you, but I'm going to record it and I'm going to share that with you. And perhaps it's a decision the club may make to use as a tool for planning your meetings.
Wow, awesome. Thank you very much. If it is online, let us know. We join.
Yeah. Yeah, but we meet at 7:30 Mountain Time, which should be the middle of the morning, your early AM hours for you guys.
So
I
that
don't
would
want to
be
ask it. I always emphasize in evaluations that your job is to add value. And I want to make sure the biggest challenge is making sure that we call it giving the speaker something to grow on. And again, really the hard part with evaluations is listening. You have to be very dialed in to the speaker and listen for almost everything they do, every little tick, things like that. So to me, the real challenge is the concentration and how am I going to, because you may be evaluating someone who's like a level 5 speaker who's fantastic, but still you want to come up with something for them to grow on. And to me, that's the biggest challenge when you're evaluating.
Thank you.
Jim, I would like to add, Mara had a great question. What is the challenge to the speaker? And you elaborated on that. I would like to flip it to the other side. Evaluation is a great opportunity to actually learn details of the techniques, how to deliver a compelling speech. As a matter of fact, world champion of public speaking in 2013, Press Vasilev, that's his technique. He studied and he attended 3-4 meetings a week, and he gave so many reviews and evaluations. Then, from his experience, he became a professional speaker. As a matter of fact, that's what he does nowadays.
Yeah. That 2013 speech, I've seen it, and it's fantastic.
It's online. You can find it, the YouTube. If you find it's like 5 minutes and 20-second long speech, is an amazing detail, so compact, great message, and great delivery.
Any other thoughts or questions on what we covered just today on evaluations? Now, as I said, next time we're going to get into practice. which will include, how do you organize your thoughts effectively when you are doing an evaluation and then delivering it? Because one thing I want you to remember is an evaluation is a speech. It's a little mini speech, as are every role that you take on in Toastmasters, whether you're the grammarian, the timer, those are speeches. And I want you to view them that way. And then when you come to every meeting, you want to make sure you have some kind of speaking opportunity. Doing table topics is a mini speech. It's a speaking opportunity. So one thing we'll talk about is A, how to organize your thoughts, and then B, actually how to deliver it. And I'll include in there some of the things that I like about when people deliver table topic or evaluations, things that I just can't stand when people deliver an evaluation. Okay.